I don't really know how to start shows.
Come on now, don't start liking me now.
So yeah, I'm funny compared to, well, you'll see later. I stand for mayhem! I know a lot of idiots. I think a lot of is mean-spirited just because it goes against what they believe. But the relief of comedy is it takes things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour.
We got a purple suit to buy and a gigantic coffin.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a History of Comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you the legendary program All in the Family and my very important guest. You may know him from The Dozen or Surviving Barstool or possibly even The Kirk Minihane Show. It's Kirk Minihane, my mentor. Thank you for joining me.
Don't say that. Hello. Please don't
my father figure.
This will be quick. Yes.
My best pal.
You're meathead, and I'm. We're always battling, but at the end of the day, down the basement, we will. Yeah. So we talked about this on my show when Norman Lear died.
Yes.
That it's weird to think that probably you have to introduce All in the Family to a lot of your audience. In a way, they probably know the show if they listen to the show, but it's been off the air for so long. It doesn't have a syndication life. It did when I was younger. But not really like these other shows do. Because it's just older.
I want to get to that. Norman Lear kind of illustrates why that is that I never really thought of. But yeah, it's nowhere near, like, you see Seinfeld on every day on 10 million stations. But even like when I was a kid, it was the Brady Bunch or like Dick Van Dyke on Nick at Night.
Right.
And All in the Family never had that, or at least in my time.
It did when I was in high school-ish, because I was in high school. I remember I had a great second half of senior year block. I had free period, lunch free period, my second, and I had open campus, so I had like 2 hours off, and I would go home, and I would have lunch, and All in the Family was on afternoon syndication on like channel 50, New Hampshire channel, or 68 or something, and I would have my lunch and watch 2 episodes of All in the Family. It was great. It was like syndication until like pretty consistent like the early 90s, which really meant like, and they would put Archie Bunker's Place on that syndication.
Yeah.
So that's probably about like 10 years after it was over. So yeah, but you're right. It definitely not have the Friends. Of course not. It's a different show.
Was it a cool show for like
a
kid your age?
No, I was old to like it.
Yeah. Young to like it.
Right. I was considered old because I liked it. Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I was asking is like, I mean, now obviously if a kid watched whatever fucking sitcoms on CBS, that's very weird.
Correct.
But I didn't know if back then, because it was kind of, I don't know, going against the main, it was like an edgy show, obviously. So.
Yeah, but it wasn't even like considered, like, because
it was very political though.
Yeah, and shows like that didn't get, like there wasn't a second life on streaming. Obviously, there wasn't a second like once it was gone, it was just gone.
Yeah.
Oddly, CBS brought it back. Some old episodes in like the summer of like 91 maybe.
Okay. And
it did pretty well. And they had talked about like maybe even bringing it back. David Mamet for a while talked about writing an Archie Bunker screenplay.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to all that. Don't alpha me on my own show.
Well, yeah, you're not going to beat me on this one. Yeah,
first, first I got to tell people about blindmike.net. If you'd be so kind as to go there.
Yes, go.
Subscribe for the love of God. You get bonus episodes of this show every week, or every month, as well as early releases. So make sure you subscribe on Patreon or YouTube if you like doing that, or all the free links are there, blindmike.net. So we appreciate if you would check that out.
Go do it.
Thank you. So as you, I'm sure, know, it was obviously in England first. This was an English hit, which I want to talk to you about because you called Norman Lear the biggest figure in television history.
Yes.
And I have some questions about that.
Yes.
But first we will hear from, I believe, Bud Yorkin telling us a little about that. And even this,
so Death Us Do Part?
Till Death Us Do Part.
I always mess up that name, yeah.
It's a name you're supposed to mess up.
Right,
almost.
right, yes, that's a joke.
He refers to 8 episodes here. That's not right, and I'll explain why after we hear the clip. But this is Bud Yorkin talking about them kind of discovering the show in England.
This is Bud Yorkin, Controversy Overseas in England.
Yeah.
Did you know that you were plunging into deep waters with this? I mean, was it controversial in England?
Very, very controversial. I mean, I watched that. They only did 8 shows. I mean, they were thrown off the air. I think altogether in 3 years they did 13 shows. Johnny Spate never did. He did like 6 or 7, and I knew we were gonna. I didn't have any belief that it was going to happen. I'll be very honest with you. I said, geez, there's Norman again. God bless you, go do it. I never thought it would get out of the air. I literally never thought, nor did I even think we'd ever get to make a pilot out of it. I just thought, geez, we're going to. When we finally did make the pilot, which I thought was terrific, ABC passed on it. cast it was too controversial.
So I couldn't figure out what he was. He said 8 episodes. That's not true. There were Norman Lear when he would talk about it. Like I saw him on like Dick Cavett referring to it, and he said there were 24 episodes. When I looked it up, there were actually 54 episodes. But then I found out there was basically like a revival of it for color, like BBC trying to bring it back for color.
That's how they did it.
So I think they rebroadcast it, but I don't know what he means by.
I don't know if he meant there was like an 8-episode option for them in the American version initially. Like, yeah, I
couldn't figure out. But Till Death Us Do Part was written by a guy named Johnny Spate that he mentions there. That was kind of, I guess the way he did it was kind of like how South Park does it now, where it was basically 6 days to air. Like, and the scripts came in very last minute.
Right.
Sometimes late. The studio said it was because he was a booze hound. He said it was to keep it topical.
Right.
But yeah, it was not quite as controversial as Bud Yorkin says there, because people were like disappointed with the revival because they said it lost some of that topicality element of it. But my question is more like Norman Lear says he never watched it. He said he read about it.
I've read that. Yeah.
TV Guide, and that it was a lot like the relationship with his father,
his
and everything.
dad. Yeah.
When you call Norman Lear the most important figure in television history, what doesn't make sense to me is like Ricky Gervais is always credited as the creator of The Office. Even the American version is very different than the English version, but people still say Ricky Gervais created it.
Right.
Why has Norman Lear pretty much gotten full credit for both this and Sanford and Son, which were just a spin on an idea that he took from England?
Well, I think more, I guess an American, but yeah, I mean, my take on it is just how different All in the Family was versus anything else that's ever been on American television. Sure. It's like Flying to the Moon versus Cars. Like every sitcom before that was nothing like All in the Family. It was like Norman Lear would always say, the plot of these sitcoms was the husband who works in advertising or an architect calls his wife and says the boss and his wife are coming over for dinner, and the wife drops a pot roast on the ground.
Right.
And she's got 50, and like that was hey, I'm going to fight with my roommate. We're going to cut the room in half. Yeah. Where like this just like blew everyone's mind away. And we'll get into the controversy of the episodes. But, my thing is Norman Lear, like if he didn't really know about this British All in the Family and he came up with this show, to me is so revolutionary. And put it this way, and I've said this, there's no Mad Men, there's no Sopranos, there's no South Park. South Park is credited.
Right.
None of that. And that's not because of the British version of All in the Family.
Sure.
It's because of All in the Family. NYPD Blue.
I would say specifically Archie Bunker, where like Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, Cartman, those are all Archie Bunker.
Anti-hero guys, right, who are like Archie. Every episode at the end, Archie was a dunce.
Right.
Like, but a lovable, more lovable as the series went on, I think almost too much, but like a lovable guy who proved that, actually he's wrong and everyone else is right. Archie puts his head down. Edith hugs him. The audience applauds, and we'll do it again next week. Right. But the conversations going on within it were so. I'm jealous of like people like my parents who would watch it, like they would watch it like while it was actually live. They must. I can't imagine their life being, My Three Sons and Dennis the Menace and Leave It to Beaver. And then all of a sudden, fucking All in the Family rolls in 1970 and 71.
Yeah, well, the famous one that's been mentioned on a couple other shows that we've talked about, I think, but All in the Family is one that really obviously pushed the boundaries with, like, pregnancy. You couldn't say the word pregnancy.
No, people slept in different beds.
That's a weird one to me. It's like if you're protecting the kids or whatever, any child that has a younger sibling, what did they think was happening? Like, I never understood.
I mean, look,
it's different than cursing or anything.
Put it this way, there are words that were said in All in the Family at CBS in 1970. In 1970, that we're not going to say on this podcast in 2024.
Oh, no. Well,
you might.
The line I always use is that like they call Norman Lear a trailblazer, and we've been dragging brush over the path ever since.
And Mel Brooks, I think, is the same way. So it's like, and it's just, I mean, and I don't have a problem with it because Archie is kind of a fool. So like he's closed-minded, and they're making, which I think was Norman Lear's fight the whole time with It's a miracle that show got on the air. It's a miracle.
Yes. Well, I think we might still. What's our next clip, Coleman? Because we might still be in England here.
Clip 2 is vastly different shows.
Oh yeah. So this is Norman kind of talking about the difference that we're talking about between that and the British version.
Mm-hmm.
Had you seen the actual British version of it?
No.
How could you then get permission to do this?
Well, I didn't need permission to do it because what I was doing was 180 degrees removed from what they were doing. I was doing an American situation comedy, and what they did was an argument on a subject. They're going to argue Afghanistan or...
Well, not Afghanistan.
But not Afghanistan, whatever the subject was going to be. And that's what they would do for a half hour. And I saw those later, and I got the scripts. But because I got the idea from the show, a created by credit, which I later learned it was nonsense.
You were being very generous doing that.
Well, I didn't think I was being generous. I thought I was being fair and honest, and I got the idea from something else, and so how could I have created it? But anybody looking at the two shows will see two vastly different shows, and I needn't have done it, but I enjoyed doing it.
Which is true. I've watched those, just out of curiosity, and they're definitely different.
Okay, because I really just looked up the description of the character, the whatever the Archie Bunker is very similar.
Right, same situation. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the way he's talking about it is it was like they were basically debating a topic, essentially, was the episode.
I think of it as The Godfather is a very successful book. I don't think it's a great book, but somebody took it, read the book, obviously, but made it into a masterpiece.
Right.
Which can happen.
But Norman got lucky in a way because the pilot was there. At least one of them, if not two, is on YouTube. I think you can go find that.
Yes.
So there were two separate pilots, all with. I'm surprised
Stapleton.
by this that it was all Gene Stapleton and Carol O'Connor.
Right.
That in the years that they were trying to get it on the air, no project took them away from.
Crazy, I know, and they were working. But Carol O'Connor was a working actor.
Yeah.
He was a character actor. I'm trying to think of a modern day comparison of somebody becoming super successful like that. It's not like Odenkirk. I don't know, where it's like this lifetime supporting. It's almost like almost like Cranston in a way, except he had the sitcom.
Yeah.
But Carol Connor was in movies. He played heavies on TV. So I mean, it was, you might have this, but he wanted Mickey Rooney originally.
I do, yeah.
Charles Durning, I think, would have made sense, but he saw Carol O'Connor in maybe Kelly's Hero, I forget, and said this was going to work.
Right.
And obviously, it's there's no chance the show works with somebody else.
Right.
None.
So, we'll get to that. But
sorry, Mike, I'm jumping ahead now.
Thank you.
Mike's sticking to this.
I'm a stickler. I'm very prepared.
A lot of laughs with this guy in this comedy show, folks. Jesus God.
Don't
fucking principle.
Don't point things out that they're now going to comment. But they so. Archie,
how many videos? Do we have 96 clips? How
I
many
have 14
clips?
total.
14
We've
clips?
gotten through 2.
Okay, well.
You ever listen to this show? You pretend to.
Well, yeah, but I just want to eat lunch. Usually I'm running in the morning, I'm listening to it. Hey,
all right, we'll breeze through.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
So yeah, Archie Justice was the original name, which I'm glad they didn't. That was, I think Norman Lear even acknowledged. I saw in one interview acknowledge. He's like, yeah, we realized that later. It was a little on the nose.
That's bad.
But yeah, they changed the name. They had different kids in there.
Yep.
Each time, one was like an NFL tight end. He played for the Raiders.
Yeah, one of the mics.
In the second version, and then finally they got to Rob Reiner, which we'll get to that as well. But what's next, Coleman?
3 is actually Mickey Rooney.
Yeah. Oh, perfect timing. Good. I'm glad I didn't drone on too much.
It's on the phone, and I had never met him, but he calls me Norm, and he says, well, what's the idea? And I said, Mickey. He said, call me Mick. I said, Mick, I'll be coming to California anyway in a few days. I'd love to meet you. No, tell me you can tell Mick anything. So I told him, this is about a bigot. It's about a guy who calls them spades and
I have Norman say it, not me.
Sure, I understand.
Spicks and he hears this and he says, they're going to kill you in the streets. Norm, they're going to kill you. They're going to shoot you dead in the streets. Now, you want to do a show with the Mick? Listen to this. Ex-Vietnam vet, blind, private eye, large dog. That's all he said.
When he was describing that, I thought he was leading to something. That show never got made. Whatever he's talking about never got made. I thought he was going to be like, and we all know that as whatever. But
There's a great writer, William Goldman, one of my favorite writers ever. He wrote All the President's Men. He wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I might actually have this. He wrote a bunch of books about making movies. See if I can find it. If I actually have this on my phone, I don't have the book downloaded, but he would be like a doctor for scripts. He'd come in and polish scripts. One of them was Twins for Ivan Reitman, the director who directed Meatballs and Stripes and stuff like that. And he said, interesting about Ivan Reitman, he's like, for a comedy figure, he was never remotely funny. And that was always my take with Norman Lear.
Yes.
Like, he was not a fun, but like that wasn't his job.
No, and he's very long. The reason you're going to be here so long today is he's so long-winded, and I have so many clips of him.
But yeah, we may not get to all of them. But yeah, but like he didn't have to be. That wasn't his job. Like, he could tell he knew, like in a way, Carl Reiner was kind of like that.
Right.
He covered. Like, he was and obviously
a little bit. He was funny with Norm.
And with Jerry Seinfeld. But I mean, like, he wasn't like a comedic out there figure where he was more of a producer. He was more of a creator. So, but yeah. So Archie Justice and Mickey Rooney would have been a mistake, and it may have never made the air.
The other names that I guess the network wanted were Tom Bosley, which probably wouldn't have been, but Jackie Gleason was a name I heard.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Well,
I think that could have worked.
He's definitely a cousin of Ralph Cramden.
Sure.
Like, that relationship is very honeymoon. Like, there's a real similarity there. She's sweet.
Right.
But she would sometimes give him, we'll get into it, I'm sure, but like the Edith at the beginning of the series is a lot different.
Right.
A lot different.
Even her voice is a little toned down. That happens in sitcoms in general, where it's like just the characters get more exaggerated, like Kevin in The Office.
Yeah, she became, at the beginning, she was much more like sarcastic and would shit on Archie.
Right. She got dumber as the series.
Yeah, which was smarter. She became much more likable and like, she's one of the most beloved characters of all time, I think. Yeah.
What's next, Coleman?
Clip 4 is the CBS schedule.
Okay, so this is interesting where they I enjoyed Fred Silverman talking about this.
Fred Silverman.
He really hated the CBS schedule when he got there, I guess.
It was well, he'll talk about sure, Petticoat Junk,
Green
Beverly
Acres,
Hillbillies, and it was all like, it was like not real shows.
And then Fred Silverman came in for the Rural Purge, I believe it was called.
He did.
And I called him up, and it was a couple of weeks before the start of the season. I said, Bob, we really are. We have some resources. We got to deploy them in a better way. And I'm just, please listen. I think that All in the Family can be a major hit for us. Let's get it out of that time period. Put it at the beginning of Saturday. Let's do a simple flip. We'll do a simple flip where we'll take All in the Family, put it at 8, and take My Three Sons and put it at 10:30 Monday. It's the last year anyway. And I said, the second thing you should consider doing, it's Mary Tyler Moore. It's such a smart show. Let's put it on Saturday night. You got Dick Van Dyke at 9 o'clock. Let's put it at 9:30, and we'll move, I don't know, Hogan's Heroes, whatever the hell was in there.
He's got a little bit of, you got that Warren Littlefield where he's never wrong when he tells stories. Like Fred Silverman's never like wrong.
Oh, well, he's like these shit kicking shows.
Yeah. Which I mean, look, it's the most famous line, but except maybe NBC in the 80s, most famous television line of all time.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
I was watching something after that said he went to NBC after and greenlit something called like Going Bananas, which was a monkey psychic show. So it wasn't all successes for old Fred.
Yeah.
But like that's a thing too that's completely changed is like the idea of putting it on Saturday. Now that would be a burial.
Dead. Right.
I still don't quite understand that because that would, to me, would be the night that everyone's going out, even in 1972 or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't get why that made it so much better.
I think TV was just like oddly like still kind of new.
Yeah.
Like if you think about it, like especially with people making these decisions, 15 years old, 20 years, like I think people thought, I never knew why Saturday night back then was like a good night for stuff like that. I don't know the reasoning. Sunday night I get, but Saturday nights and Friday nights I never really understood.
Yeah. The other reason I want to play that clip is I found it interesting that like back in the day they realized they were appealing too much to the middle of the country. They're like, we have all these we appeal to these fucking hillbillies. We need to get to the coasts, and now it's the complete opposite also.
True. Yeah.
What's next, Coleman?
Next is clip 5, Lovable Bigot.
Yeah, so this is the real crux of it's Carol O'Connor talking to Dick Cavett about some of the controversy, or I guess not even controversy, the way that Archie Bunker was described. And I kind of realized going through a lot of these interviews that there was a lot of defending, it seemed like, as the series went on, from Gene Stapleton or Carol O'Connor or even Rob Ron. There was a lot of defending of the characters, not quite like they were embarrassed by it, but like, I don't know. They wanted to get their side out there.
Well, I think it was very important to Carol O'Connor that he was not Archie Bunker.
Yes,
like he would do videos he'd do promotions for politicians. He would do things like for Democrats. He wanted to know.
There were PSAs. I don't know if this was during or after all. There were PSAs where he's like, it's one thing to play a bigot, but to actually be stuff like
correct.
that.
Yeah. So we wanted, but it's it was so important though, obviously for that show. Like he had to be lovable. Like he wasn't lovable. He's just a freaking bigot. Like then he's just a bigot. Like what's the show doesn't work.
Right.
Like, it works. That show, I think, Sopranos for sure. But that's like one of the 3 or 4 shows most. Like that lead character has to work. It has to work.
Oh, right. Well, we'll get
to that
to
show is so claustrophobic too. That's the other thing. Like there are more people on an episode of Sopranos than were in the history of the series of All in the Family.
Yeah, which is why we'll get to why it's weird they thought it could work without Archie eventually, which is strange.
Well, that
but,
was a very yeah.
But let me hear him talk about his character, Carroll O'Connor.
Well, you said lovable bigot. That's got us into some kind of trouble with the press.
Are you sick of that phrase?
No, I'm not sick of it. But somebody said that I was playing a lovable bigot, and then the next thing you know, a lady in New York whom nobody had ever heard from in about 20 years wrote a big thing in the New York Times about Archie being a lovable bigot.
Laura Hobson. That's right, I remember that.
Well, I don't know about the lovable part of it. You see, what we're doing is we're really as I see it at least, we're presenting the story of a man who's basically a pretty unhappy guy. You people may laugh at him and enjoy him, but he's not really making it in the modern world at all. And you rarely see him happy about anything. And so one of the things that, the main thing that makes him happy, of course, is this volume of errors. The errors that he's grown up with. You know, his racism and his bigotry, those are errors that were put upon him when he was learning things at his mother's knee. Mm-hmm. And he's grown up with these beliefs, these misconceptions, and they really are now poisoning his life. So you almost realize that while you're enjoying the show, and I'm delighted that you are enjoying the show, you must look at Archie as a man who could be getting a lot more out of his life if he didn't have these burdens on him and these things that have poisoned his life.
So I even found interviews from 30 years after this where they're kind of doing the same defending. Do you think they needed to do all that? Because I feel like, and it seemed like Norman Lear kind of agreed that just let it speak for itself.
I agree.
Like Norman Lear's response was basically like, well, if you find the bigoted qualities about him admirable, then good for you.
But not everybody, but Carroll O'Connor is one of those guys.
Yeah.
Where you never looked at him as anything else again. He was on. He had a show after that. He did in Heat of the Night. I think it was on for like 8 years.
Yeah.
But he was always Archie Bunker.
Sure.
And that's got to be like a weird, like you're a racist. Like everyone's looking at you like you're Archie Bunker. Like the world, even all the way up to Trump, they talked about the Archie Bunker voter. Like there's. Yeah. So I think that's part of it. I think he's a sensitive guy, and I think he wanted everyone to know he wasn't Archie Bunker, and it was very important to be. He was smart, and he was because in the past he was a thoughtful guy. So I think he was always chasing that. But yeah, he was also a guy who, like in interviews, was not a lot of yucks.
No, but I noticed.
But plays Archie comedically, like unbelievably,
Brilliantly,
unbelievably well. Like
that's a lot of actors. Like Sean Penn was good in fucking a comedy when he was young. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I think that's the case with a lot of actors. Is they're such good actors that they're able to play comedy even though they don't know what the hell it is. De Niro is not a funny guy if you hear him interviewed,
right?
But he can be funny.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Lost my train of thought. What's the next clip? Just so I get back on track here.
Clip six is difficult on set.
Oh, that's real quick though. That's what I was going to say is that Republican candidates for different levels of office were like lobbying for Archie Bunker
to endorse him.
To endorse him. Yeah. So that's to your point. That's the kind of shit he dealt with. But yeah, Carroll O'Connor may have been a little difficult at times.
Well, he and Norman Lear definitely banged heads. They were banging heads all the time, and Archie and Carroll O'Connor wanted more control creatively, which we'll get to later. He got.
Yeah.
But
I think they discussed that here. It's Corolla with Norman Lear, actually.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm hearing it.
I heard that Carroll O'Connor was difficult and did not want to go along with a lot of the stuff you were shaping his character into. Is that true?
Yeah, very true.
Was he the kind of person where his politics weren't the same as Archie's politics, or did he say, I don't want to be seen as a buffoon or this kind of guy or possibly racist, or what was his beef?
It was an intellectual thing. I mean, he knew he cared about playing Archie. He loved it. He knew what we were doing. We never received a piece of mail from anybody that said right on Archie that didn't say something like, but you horses' asses, or go back where you fucking came from, or something like that.
Right.
They were always angry letters that still said right on Archie.
Keep in mind,
they got the point.
I know you don't usually interrupt these things, Mike, but keep in mind, this is what, at this point, a 90...
Oh, he was probably 96 or 97.
I mean, it's until the end, really. Like, There's probably an interview with him like a year ago like this.
I didn't have any because I didn't think they were relevant, but there's clips of him from Kimmel from a year or two ago.
He just sounds he sounds the same.
Exactly the same.
He was, when I was younger and he'd be on TV sometimes, like they have All in the Family specials. When I was a kid, I was like, this guy's fucking old.
Yeah.
Well, it was like 40 years ago.
He was, for most of the All in the Family run, he was in his 50s. I think he was in his late 40s when it started.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, he was always an old guy.
Those guys were all younger.
Guy.
Those guys were all younger. Carol O'Connor was a couple years younger than me.
Yeah.
Norman Lear was young when they did this thing. It's crazy. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Coleman.
Carol loved the point. He was an Irish Dublin acting intellectual, and he disagreed with the scripts from an intellectual basis that was altogether wrong often. And I also think he was
Yeah, so he wasn't necessarily comfortable with the role he was playing, but there's also like contractual stuff that he was dealing with a lot. Yeah. I don't know. I assume you're familiar with a character named Stretch Cunningham.
You know, play them. The great James Cromwell, who's had a very long career. You would know him from, let me think. He was Oscar nominated, say, for Babe. He was in he was in Succession recently. You would know James Cromwell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All
Stretch
right.
Cunningham had a so I first knew James Cromwell, yeah.
So that would have been, I mean, I guess Norman Lear had no choice. If the star is threatening to walk, you have no choice but to be like, okay, we're going to replace him.
Right.
But they must have known that was never going to work,
It would be
right?
like killing Tony Soprano. Yeah, you can't. And they had a couple of episodes.
Oh, yeah.
They had the ones like, Where's Archie? They had sent Archie off to a convention in Buffalo. And he wasn't on for 2 episodes because he was holding out.
Yeah.
And they did episodes without him. And they're still in syndication. Because I think I have a DVR pass for, I think it's like MeTV or something. It's on like every
It's
Sunday.
on Amazon now, too, I saw.
Okay, yeah. And one of them was on the other night, and it's crazy watching it. I was like, they must have been scrambling like mad.
Yeah, and those are what we're referring to are different incidents. I think one was, Stretch Cunningham was season 3
earlier,
and what you're referring to was season 5. I think.
Yes, first couple, beginning of season 5.
So they kind of kill him off, or like leave the door open so that they could kill him off.
Right.
And they have Mike says like, I haven't been called a meathead, I miss it, that sort of shit.
Right.
With the Stretch Cunningham thing, what I like, this is the kind of a shrewd guy that Carol O'Connor was, is they made them kill off Stretch Cunningham
later on,
so that the character could never come back. I guess.
I like Stretch too. Poor dumb Stretch. But they, the way every All Family episode, once they figured it out, was basically the same. It was either Gloria and Edith talking in the kitchen or something, or Meathead and Edith talking in the kitchen, and I'm the same way still. I'm just like, let's go. Let's get him out. Get him home.
Yeah.
Let's get and once Archie, and then like we're off to the races. How was your day? It was terrible. Boom. Every one was pretty much the same. And I'd be curious, if you really did your work, you'd have the answer to this. What percentage of the entire series was set in that house?
Oh, that I don't know.
I know. I'm just kidding. But I mean, like, I am talking like 97%.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a big thing with Archie Bunker's place, is that like, oh, we're getting him out of the house
bar
now,
and giving him a
basically.
girlfriend. Yeah, that sucked. But like Gloria and Mike eventually move into the Jeffersons' house. So they go there once in a while, and they go to Kelsey's bar once Archie bought it. But like they were
then at
never.
the very end, they go to they live in L.A., right? Mike and Gloria.
Yeah, they move out
like
there.
that?
They do a couple episodes out there. But that's after they left the series for like that. Yeah. But I mean, like pretty much, you were just in. They occasionally go upstairs to Archie's in Edith's bedroom. You were in that main area all the time.
Right.
Like you basically never left, which is like.
It was one of the many spin-offs, I think, was 704 Hauser. Is that
Well,
right?
who starred in that?
I don't know.
You don't know who starred in that series?
I don't think so.
John Amos.
My God.
Well, I know most of your listeners don't get that joke.
Folks, there's a caller to a program.
But John Amos, of course, had the famous falling out with Norman Lear on Good Times.
Oh, well, in the Norman Lear episode, you might not like that one as much because we really sided with Eric Monti, I think.
Yes.
We were seeking justice for Eric Monti.
Yes. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, you're not wrong. But yeah, so we'll get into the 7,000 spin-offs, but yeah.
Yeah. But that's one thing I wanted to, is I watched a few of the very early episodes just because I was curious how it started right out of the gate. Because like if you go back and Seinfeld's the best example probably of a show that isn't a show yet in season 1.
Not All in the Family.
All of it gets right out of the gate. They told, and I think that might be the benefit of doing 2 pilots,
right?
Where you get rid of the Archie Justice cheese on it.
Well, the thing I find about seasons one still figuring out a little bit. I like 2 and 3 a lot, but probably my favorite in some ways. But like Archie's a wild man.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
he's not like he is like. I mean, we're talking fucking crazy. Like everything's in play.
Yeah.
But you're right out of the gate. And I think they figured out Edith's a great character, but they figured out they had magic with Archie and with
Archie and Mike.
Yeah, I mean that's
for
just
sure.
that's the show.
And I think that originally even was the crux of the show,
Yes.
where Norman Lear's like, "This is me and my dad."
Right.
Basically, is what he said.
Where Sally Struthers, a lot of Sally Struthers saying, "Ma, let me help you with the salad," and she'd go in the kitchen
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Meathead
yeah.
and Archie would fight.
Yeah.
And that's all you want. Like when I watch them still, now I'll just fast forward to the scenes with the two of them a lot.
Yeah, and to Norman Lear's credit, I know I bring up that like it came from England and all of that, but like just Stifle and the chair and all of that. Norman says
Right.
like that was completely his father. Like that was all his influence.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, yeah. The line normally would always say you're the dumbest white person
Yep.
I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Right.
What's next, Colin?
Which you are, Mike.
Wait a second. You're supposed to show me some goddamn respect.
I apologize.
Clip 7 is Mike Stivic.
Oh, so this is Rob Reiner talking about his character, and I thought he kind of gives away something interesting that I thought is the perfect summation of what makes this like one of the perfect shows that exist.
It is.
And why it was so different from everything else in the
Yeah,
series.
yeah, good.
Well, he was, he was a wide-eyed liberal, kind of long-haired and product of his times, really. Archie would call him a bleeding heart liberal. But he was also, oddly enough, because it was a bit of a chauvinist.
Yeah, it's very smart.
Even though he was liberal-minded in his, stance against the war and for civil rights and so on. When it comes to the women's movement, I think he was probably like all men, even the most liberal of men, except for Alan Alda, to kind of push back a little bit against feminism.
Yeah, and I thought Carroll had a good way of explaining when he was talking to Norman Lear. He said most shows back then were the white hats versus the black hats,
Right.
Or the black hats singular.
Yeah, no,
where it's like
right.
there was a bad guy versus good guys. Whereas like as Rob Reiner's saying there, the characters were human beings. They were flawed.
Yep.
So even the guy, there were some people that agreed with Archie. That at the end they were like, he is a fucking idiot though, or that agreed with Mike and were like, he's kind of a prick to his wife, or he can be naive,
He could be
or
sexist,
whatever.
super sexist. Yeah, and Archie would jump on it, and for sure. Yeah, it wasn't cut and dried at all.
Yeah,
That is
and that's
definitely
something
true.
they did way before it, where
Oh.
these are human beings, and that's like you said, Mad Men, Breaking Bad's a great example where it's like the whole concept of Breaking Bad is like these people are doing awful things, you're supposed to relate to them. That comes from All in the Family directly. There was nothing like that before.
I mean, there's literally no Andy Sipowicz without Archie Bunker. Like now, my PD Blue, like just zero chance.
Right.
Like he's legitimately a product of Archie Bunker. Yeah, and then and you'd have discussions on the show where Mike would be fighting Archie about something involving Gloria and taking Gloria's side, and Gloria would say, "Well, that's not how I feel. Like, what are you talking about?" And then they'd have that discussion, and you're right. Like the idea that like these people at CBS the year before watching Hogan's Beverly Hillbillies, like it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and they have Archie like he's the idiot, but he makes some points
Oh,
sometimes
for sure.
where you're like now if that character were created, he'd be the idiocy of Woody Boyd or Joey Tribbiani or one of those characters. But like he would make his points were backed by some sort of information, even though he was an idiot.
And Mike, for all his stuff, was very happy not to work and to take Archie's food. And Archie was working so he could go to college.
Right.
Like that was always part of it too. Gloria worked. Edith was at home. Mike was doing his work, and Archie worked for all of them. Like he was, he was.
There were
a
pros
provider.
and cons to each character, which
except for Edith, really, they made her almost like a saint.
But she was dumb.
She was dumb, but she was also,
Yeah.
like wise and dumb, like
Sure.
almost like she was almost like an angel in the show, which was fine.
Normally, I heard call her like a Jesus figure on the show.
She really was. Like, Edith the Good Archie would say so, but like they would have these discussions, but like at the end of the day, Archie loved all of them, and like that was important to him. Like he obviously has issues with Meathead, but he still this was his daughter's husband, and he thought like he was a veteran of the war and he was a child of the Depression. Like his job was to work.
Right.
And there are great episodes like he had to get his high school diploma.
Yeah.
To keep his job, and Mike like helped him out, and then they kind of learned about each other. Like stuff like that was so smart. It was so different. And by the way, way smarter than anything now on situation comedy.
Holds up perfectly. I mean, there are like 70s, there's 70s
it's old.
lingo and references in there, but like I can watch that now and genuinely laugh as opposed to a lot of other shows where you're like, oh, I get why that would have been
Right.
funny then or whatever.
Right.
But like
Yeah.
it has genuine laughs now.
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
Pops.
For sure.
What's next, Colton?
Clip 8 is Family Viewing Hour.
Oh, so this was a big, are you familiar with this? This was a big controversy.
Oh, yeah.
So Norman Lear, I also heard like Alan Alda talk, this has affected a lot of people back then. They were furious about Family Viewing Hours. So basically from 7 to 9, they kind of arbitrarily said like, no dirty stuff and never really outlined what that was.
What it was, right.
So this is from 60 Minutes, I believe, with Norman Lear.
You seem to believe that the value of All in the Family will be diminished because you seem to believe that it will not be able to be played in syndication, that is, in individual stations in reruns, in Family Hour time.
Well, I know what I have been told by individual syndicators and by independent stations across the country. They tell me that because All in the Family is on at 9 o'clock at night, was taken from 8 o'clock after 5 years at night and put on at 9 o'clock at night, that it has been stigmatized as a non-family hour show. These people who operate the independent stations that will later syndicate the show tell me that as long as Family Hour exists, the show will carry a stigma which will not enable them to run it at 7 o'clock at night, at 7:30, at 8, at 8:30, and thereby decrease its value.
That kind of made me realize, like, even when I was a kid, I always wondered, like, once I knew what All in the Family was, I was always like, why wasn't that reran as much as any other show from that time, really?
Right.
And you kind of realize, when, like I said, when I go back and watch the first few episodes, I mean, there's slurs in there, like you said, that we won't say on this show now. Norman Lear threw them out earlier.
Sure.
But there's, like, stuff in the episodes where it's like, okay, I get why that wasn't syndicated, but it is odd when you see something as popular as All in the Family was, that there was never a mindset of like, hey, let's do a little more of this.
Yeah.
You know, like that's very weird to me.
I just think it's a miracle on the air.
Yeah.
Like Norman Lear was a semi-successful figure at that point.
Yeah.
Not really. Nobody in the show was a star. Like, in the subject matter was crazy.
Right.
Like, you're right that once it happens, but we see this all the time, where it's like, you have really smart people too, which I think is part of it. But you're right, like whether it's, whatever. There was, 20 people who tried to do Mad Men in some form or fashion.
Sure.
But you're right. Yeah, nobody. Yeah, and I don't know why. But it's also correct that it didn't have, like we said at the beginning of the show, I guess with Lear's, it didn't have an insane syndication run.
No. And one thing too that was made a big deal of, and we mentioned it a little more in the Norman Lear episode, but like the disclaimer that came on, those guys all talked about that. Right. And Rob Reiner defined it as basically, they put a disclaimer on that said like, don't watch this, essentially, is what they were trying to get across to the audience. Like, we're not proud of this. But to me, like, I don't know if you remember, there was some controversy, I forget what movie it was. It was on HBO Max a few years ago. And there was a big stink that they put a censor before it, like a disclaimer.
Yes, right.
Saying that there was like language that we don't stand by or whatever. To me, just fucking do that always. You know what I mean? Like, put a disclaimer in front of everything, and then don't worry about tell people exactly what it is.
But
and then
people are still going to bitch anyway. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you do it or don't do it. You're right. Yeah, I guess you put it in front of friggin' whatever, Abbott Elementary, I guess. I mean, someone's going to be offended. So, but I don't know what that does. I don't know what that buys.
I don't know, but it's what they did with Rogan, and you kind of stopped hearing bitching about it as much.
That's true.
Like, I say just do it in front of everything, because to me, that's not censorship the way, and we can skip the next censorship clip because it's kind of along the same lines as the last one. But it's Norman Lear talking more about, like, the stuff that they don't want on air that works. Like, they've kind of proven it works. And I think in that 60 Minutes piece, he's talking about Mary Hartman being basically too edgy for network television.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. And I always thought the same thing about Stern. Well, actually, you're a perfect example of this. Why wouldn't radio stations see how Stern works and embrace a guy like you?
Right.
Instead, they run from it. And they're like, okay, Howard Stern worked, but that's too much for it. We can't handle it.
And when you say success, just to be clear, All in the Family was the number one show for 5 straight years, which it never happened at that point.
Right.
And of course, people talk about this all the time. Number one show in America in 1974 means 35 million people were watching.
Oh, they said, so season 1, it like struggled basically
early on.
before they said the Emmys was a big deal for them.
Huge. They actually did an opening skit at the Emmys that year.
Do you know what their share was season 1?
Share, not the rating number?
Right. This was a bad rating in 19.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got 26?
28.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's for 3
28%
options.
of televisions that were on were watching All in the
yeah.
Family.
But, I mean, then it just became a tight, like, that's like when it was off. It was the biggest show of all time at that point. No show had ever been number one for 5 years in a row.
Right.
No show had been number one after that for 5 years in a row until American Idol.
Right.
So, I mean, it was just unprecedented. And there was 40 million people a week were watching this show.
What's next, Coleman?
Clip 10 is trans character.
Oh, yeah. So we have a couple.
Oh, Beverly.
I have clips from a couple episodes. I didn't go with the, Sammy Davis Jr., the basic.
Right, great episode.
I wanted 2 two particular episodes I wanted your thoughts on because I thought they were more unique. And this is one where it's like, I think anyone my age that's watching this would consider like trans being a newer issue. I don't remember it talked about a lot when I was, which is why when I saw this episode, I was like,
when I was a kid,
holy
I was like, what is this? When I was a kid, I was literally like, this is really like, this was Beverly who Archie picks up in the cab. Archie also, so Archie worked at, at the docks and whatever, and also was a cab driver.
Yeah.
So he had two jobs going at the same time, and then wound up having the bar. But he picked up this. I will play the clip, I guess.
It's just a quick line from that episode.
Okay.
Here, this should cover it.
Oh, well, wait a minute. The fare was only 8 1/4. I can't break that bill.
Oh, that's all for you. I insist.
Do you know that this is a 50?
Yes.
Well, okay. I never say no to a lady.
I was telling your wife, Mr. Bugler, I'm no lady.
Ah. Well, listen. How you earn this 50 is no business of mine. I will just say thank you, miss, unless you girls like to be called Ms.
There you go.
Why don't you call me Mr.?
That's surprising to me. How, like, obviously the audience is laughing and everything, but it seems like fairly accepted. I'm obviously a lot of people did.
People want to see. I remember watching it like with my mom, and like you want to see Archie look like an idiot. Right. That's the thing. Like you're rooting. It's almost like a cartoon. Archie's almost like a cartoon figure. But like, I remember even as a kid being like, "How does fucking Archie not know?" Like,
sure,
like,
but I will say the writing was very like they do it well.
No, very
well.
well.
I could see that interaction happening. Whereas you pick The Big Bang Theory or any of those sitcoms,
Right.
it's like no human. I think Michael Scott became a good example, or
Totally.
Kevin from The Office is a better example.
Like
probably.
a moron.
No human being could function that's
Right.
this dumb.
Right.
Whereas they did it very well and very subtly, and even the like Frasier is a lot of. The plot is like, hey, in the kitchen, something is going on.
But
and over in the
here.
living room,
Right.
it's like how they would hear each other talking. Whereas All in the Family would have plot lines kind of where someone knows what's going on and the other people don't.
Right.
But they played it in a way where I could believe that.
Two things. The other thing interesting about All in the Family was different than a lot of shows back then. And they did some of this, but you'd have somebody come on as a guest star and you wouldn't see them again.
Right.
She came back.
Oh,
she
yeah.
comes back like she dies.
She
winds up
dies.
getting-
It was a
getting
sad
killed.
episode, yeah.
And every year they would have a Christmas episode that was kind of more serious. Either that breast cancer one year, there was the Draft Dodger episode, which was one of my favorite ones. And then when she died, either that or Crisis of Faith episode. But like they didn't give up on characters. Like they would be part of their, the Irene Lorenzos of the world. They would be Irene and Frank Lorenzo and all these other people, Stretch Cunningham. Like you'd see them. Like a lot of episodes, like, oh, here's my friend, and then you never see them again.
Right.
The second thing is you never saw. It's funny, Archie. You never saw him driving a cab.
That's
They
true.
always state you never saw him driving a cab. He was always you saw him at the bar, but he'd always be coming in from the shift.
Yeah. Sammy Davis did forget his briefcase in that cab.
He did. Munson brought it over. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That's one I'll say maybe not quite as believable. But
No, but he wanted to be on the show, right?
Yeah. And then the next one, you don't have to read the title, Coleman. You'll know what episode it's from, I think. And it's an episode I've always been fascinated by, and we covered in the early days of my Patreon, if you want to go check that out. It's one of the most interesting episodes in television history, I think.
All right. Just stay quiet, okay?
Oh, it's a rough one.
What are you gonna do? You ain't taking off your clothes, are you?
I always find the laughter very strange.
That's basically, well, then you get what I'm going for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
basically, the reason I wanted to play that is like the fascinating part is she's killing. she's getting laughs.
Right. She's getting raped. It's her 50th birthday.
Yeah.
And this guy's gonna rape her. Like he's like taking his clothes. And it's a two-parter. The second episode like begins with like Archie and Meathead like going in to see if he's still there. It's like wacky bits like running into each other, like tripping. Like they treat it like a sitcom.
Well, it's a two-parter because I guess Gene Stapleton said like I don't want this to just be like it's a wacky rape and then we move on. The second part was basically her dealing with the trauma afterwards.
Right.
Which is like of all the very special episodes I've seen, pretty well done. But to me, it is weird that it's like this wacky rapist with her throwing in silly lines. Like the idea, and that's what I wanted to ask you is like, because it's similar with Dudley Spills the Paint in Different Strokes. That's another famous one. Where he's getting molested.
Oh, by Gordon Jump from WKRP in Cincinnati. Of course, the bicycle episode. One of my, as a kid, I watched all the time.
That's another one where there's big laughs. And what I've always
I think that's like they thought that's the only way they could do it. Like it makes the
that's what I'm
audience
asking,
more comfortable, I guess.
But as a viewer, will people like, ha, this is a funny situation?
No, as a kid, I was like, this is weird. Why are they laughing at this? Are they nervous laughing? Because I don't know. But the actor, I think the actor's name is David Dukes, who played the rapist. I don't know. But I remember watching maybe the True Hollywood Story, and he was like, the next day, like people in the street were like
throwing things at him.
He's like 40 million people watch her try and rape Edith Bunker. Like, because remember when she gets out, she does this, she's at the stove and she gets a tremendous pop and gets out of there. But that was a weird time back then where they would do very special episodes.
Yeah, and then I think by the 90s they started to get it because like when Fresh Prince would do a very special, there weren't a lot of laughs in the sad moments. You know,
they've kind of got rid of those generally. I think
Well, yeah, like
they also got rid of laugh tracks largely too. I suppose.
That's what I was saying. You don't have a lot of those really.
Yeah.
And like How I Met Your Mother, I don't think did like a drug episode
Office,
or anything.
It's not gonna have and they have Jim. Yeah.
Right. What's next, Coleman? We're breezing through these, baby. You're gonna get your lunch.
What's next, Coleman? Is the name of the series?
Clip 12 is the Jeffersons.
Oh yeah, this is Louise Jefferson talking about they forced her hand basically. Where how much were I know Lionel was in a ton.
But I was on early on. Yeah.
How much were and I know George.
Well, it started
later,
with Henry Jefferson. Was the first Jefferson. Then George came in, and they were on like
a different. Right.
They would come in. They were on fairly like Louise and Edith had like a good relationship.
Yeah.
They were on. I'll have to look up on the episodes George Jefferson was on, but he was one of those guys like I didn't know it back then. Same with like B. Arthur, right?
Yeah.
When you first see them, you're like, oh, this guy's gonna get his own show. Like he was Sherman Helmsley was so fucking great as George Jefferson, and he and Archie were so great together.
Right, but Louise Jefferson wasn't in like every episode. Which is why I find this pretty kind of an odd thing.
I'm gonna look that up. I don't know how many episodes she was in.
Well, they forced her hand here, as she'll explain.
Oh, okay.
Jane, the casting director, Jane Murray, she called me and said, I understand that you don't want to go do the spinoff with the Jeffersons. I said, that's right, I don't. She says, why not? I said, because All in the Family is successful. I don't know what the Jeffersons is going to do. I'd rather stay with All in the Family. I know them, I'm used to them, I want to be with them. She says, well, if this is successful enough to go to finally do the spinoff, it wasn't finalized yet. To do it, she says, we will get an actress to do Louise Jefferson, and we'll write Louise Jefferson out of All in the Family. Well, that helped me make up my mind right then and there, which one to accept.
So for Norman Lear's progression, he doesn't mind throwing a black woman out of a job.
No, I mean, he got her an 11-year sitcom.
That's
made a
fair,
shitload of money.
He would have thrown her out on her ass.
It was the right move.
That's weird to me, though, the idea that, like, I'm going to be a recurring character on this show. Like, the Jeffersons were technically a staple. Looking back, they're like a staple.
She was on 26 episodes, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's not, she wasn't in.
No, but she was part of it. Like, for sure, like, she was always, you'd see her. She was probably on for 4 years, like 4 or 5 times a year. But yeah, no, I would have. It's strange that she didn't, but I get it. Isabel Sanford's her name.
Yeah,
I'm sure she had done 30 failed pilots or once. She's like, I'm All in the Family. Like, let me just do this. Like, I don't want to go do the Jeffersons have a flop.
Did you like the Jeffersons or any of the other spin-offs?
I love George Jefferson. He was just Sherman Helmsley was
great,
fucking great. I liked him better on All in the Family. I watched the Jeffersons, not much. Maud's a spinoff.
Yep.
I mean, there's a million well, I shouldn't say a million, but there were, let me think.
Gloria, as I mentioned.
That was a controversial, because there was a lot of Carol O'Connor, Sally Struthers controversy there.
I'm trying to think of other ones that were on during All in the Family.
Let me think. I guess that would be it.
704 Hauser, which we mentioned, and then there's another one later that didn't last either.
Right. Yeah, so I guess there weren't as many as I'm thinking. I feel like I'm forgetting one.
Maud and the Jeffersons were the two most famous.
Yeah, which was obviously the Jeffersons was super successful. It was on for, I think 11 years.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, I like the but George Jefferson and Archie Bunker together were just was probably not. It's actually not enough.
And Sherman Hemsley would always say, like, people said it's just a black Archie Bunker, basically, but they're very different characters too.
Right.
Where, like you said, obviously Archie's lower class and everything, but I think even the attitude that they had was very different. Like, you could boil it down to being similar, but like they're completely different characters in some ways.
In the end, but they were also like racist in the same way.
Right.
In a way. Like,
yeah.
Good Times. I guess Good Times is technically a spinoff because I think Good Times is a mod spinoff, maybe.
Oh, I guess so.
And some people count Archie Bunker's Place as a spinoff. I don't, but
yeah, I think we might get into that now too. What's the next clip?
I'm not.
Clip 13, Archie Bunker's Place.
Yeah, this is our second to last clip.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right.
Was this Carol O'Connor?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. He said that night we could do it. But we couldn't call it All in the Family anymore. We couldn't use the opening song that Edith and me on the telephone.
This is after, by the way, Gene Stapleton.
I think he means, but
Gene Stapleton had already left. By the way,
she left the show,
so it would have been weird if they did that anyways.
So Gene Stapleton leaves the show. Mike, so the show is basically, people know, I guess it's Mike, Gloria, Archie, and Edith. Mike and Gloria leave. Rob Reiner just wants to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, super successful career.
Yeah, and he started directing and getting more hands-on on All in the Family,
Correct.
and they said that was basically the budding of
Kind of like a Ron Howard thing on Happy. Like, correct. So they leave because I think they were just, like eventually it was like silly that these two people were living across the street. Like, it didn't make sense. But now you're like, the weird thing is Carol O'Connor, for all his resistance to it, did not want to give up playing Archie Bunker.
Right.
Like, just want, no matter what. So
that's what I found the most interesting is even he's kind of saying in this clip that he doesn't want to do it. He's doing it because the network asked him to.
I think Bill Daly, who's in charge of CBS, says to him, like, we need Archie Bunker. Because Archie Bunker, still at that point, like, the show is still like 5th or 6th in the ratings. Like, it's a huge, Archie Bunker is still a huge property in television at that point. So they're like, we want you to do this. And, I mean, I've watched this clip 70 times. I can do it for you if you want.
All right, good. You can explain it.
But he basically like has to go, the way he tells, he has to go hand in hand to Norman Lear.
Right.
And beg, right? Is it?
Yeah. But he's doing it in a way where he's like, well, Bill, like you said, Bill, I think he even says like, Daly sent me here. And
Right.
Norman's like, why do you want to do this without Gene Stapleton? He's pretending he's resistant to it, but he can't be. He's there doing it.
But he wants to do, but he also says, he tells Norman Lear, I insist you have to kill off Edith, which I think is actually the correct.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's what he's getting to. I guess Norman Lear's request was basically you have to pretend that Edith is out of town.
Right.
Or like when you're at the bar, it's like you'll take a phone call, I'll be home in an hour.
Or
whatever.
in a bathroom or something when you're there. It's like for Archie if you're going to do the show.
That's crazy. Yeah.
You got to kill Edith off, which led to a good episode. But like Archie Bunker's Place, like just doesn't. It's like a fine, like if that was a first season sitcom, you'd be like, oh, this guy's kind of interesting, but he's kind of soft. Like, he's sort of like, Archie was already super lovable at that point. Like, he kind of changed.
How do you feel about the later seasons of All in the Family, though?
I sort of like them a little because I do like that you watch a guy change.
Yeah.
Like, he's a little older. He has a grandkid. He's a little softer. That's okay. He can still get, but like, I liked watching him get older. I didn't mind it. I liked older. Meathead a little bit too. Like, it was okay. It wasn't the same. But there are good episodes, like the one where Archie's chair breaks, a great episode.
Do you think
I like when Archie and Meathead say goodbye to each other. I think it's a great TV moment. Mike tells me he loves him. I think it's a great TV moment.
Sure.
Yeah.
But do you like episodes like Archie eventually joins the KKK?
No.
Is that like a jump the shark type of thing?
Not quite, but like, he's got to protect Gloria and Mike, and they make him so stupid in times like that, which they hadn't in the past. Where I think they were just out of ideas. It was 200 episodes, so
and by then Norman Lear had 6 other shows,
and he had nothing to do with the show. Probably,
Yeah.
I think they say that. So, Carol O'Connor got what he wanted. He got complete control of what I do. So I do this. Well, I do The Case, which is this true crime series.
Sure.
And so I have this access to something called newspapers.com.
Okay.
Where I can find all these old stories. I'm looking into a story from like 1988, say. So what I wind up doing, I have lunch instead of doing that, is oftentimes I'll just read stories about like Norman Lear and Carol O'Connor fighting in 1982. Like I did the other day at lunch for like an hour. Like and they were like, Carol O'Connor got what he wanted. And the irony is it just wasn't as good as it would have been if Norman Lear was there. And Gene Stapleton and Rob Reiner. And, so we got him and like Martin Balsam and Jerry Stiller's wife.
Yeah.
Is on Ann Mears on that show.
What is the context of the little girl? Is that their niece?
This is again the television thing, right?
Yeah.
So literally Gloria and Mike are gone the first episode.
Yeah.
And I believe it's Edith's nephew.
Oh, it's a little boy.
No. Edith's nephew drops off his daughter.
Oh, okay.
Who he just can't take care of him. We've never seen this guy before.
Right.
Just drops the daughter off, and now Stephanie, and now they have to take care of her.
That's right. Yeah, Stephanie.
It's like just doing that. Like they had for a while. They had the nurse, the Spanish nurse there in the house as well. Like they're trying. She's actually in the Draft Dodger episode. I forget her name, Teresa, I think.
Yeah.
So they kept doing stuff like that because they couldn't. Because Gene Staples is in a season without Rob Reiner and Gloria.
Sally Struthers.
Sally Struthers, yeah. So that's just that you could tell she wasn't. There must have been something going on. She wasn't in that much either. There was a lot of Archie at the bar.
She wanted to leave. Well, there was. I thought about including this, but there was she was on Dick Cavett, and he says, "Would you mind doing the Edith voice?" And she goes, "I'd really rather not."
Yeah, I bet.
Like she was trying to distance herself as much as she could from that character.
Yeah, and she turned down Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they offered it to her, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't really see it. Every
Yeah.
week somebody dies in this town."
Yeah.
But yeah, so he got that show, and it just wasn't like Archie Bunker's Place. Like means nothing to me. Like it's part of syndication, but I'm not big.
Yeah, there's I've seen this clip. I don't think I've seen the full episode, but there's a clip where like his maid or maybe someone that works at the bar is a black woman, and someone at the grocery store says something like racist to her, and Archie fights her.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, would he grow that much?
Yeah, he gets
where he's like offended by slurs now. Like that seems a
And
little.
he kisses Sammy Davis Jr. in an episode. Like it's like that thing. Where it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
everything is gone. So it's like, I think they got 4 years out of it.
Yeah. Well, I won't take too much of your
No, I'm
time. I just
good.
wanted to
No,
know
I'm
one
good.
more thing.
I'll take your time. I'm good.
Are you familiar with the brand of toys that this program spun off?
Well, are you talking about the thing I have right here? My Joey Stivic doll?
That's exactly right. Can we hear this commercial?
This commercial is insane.
I saw like a snippet of it, and there was like some YouTube documentary I was watching, and I saw a snippet. I was like, well, this I have to end with, I guess.
Oh, did you watch the YouTube documentary about? It's like an hour and a half. It's like I watched it a while ago. Is it the? Do you know which one I'm talking about? Is it the same one?
Probably.
They kind of go through everything, right? Like they
Yeah.
The guy did a
probably
really
so.
good job.
Yeah.
Just watching that.
Yeah, I guess you could. I think your insight. That's why I had so many clips. I'm not used to have someone that can expand on things so
Sure,
much.
I understand.
Yeah.
Good.
Let's hear this.
I like the guy's voice here.
It's a new baby in our family, a baby doll, a famous doll, Archie Bunker's grandson, Joey Stivic. So, of course, he's special. Your child can give him a drink from his bottle, then he wets. And when his diaper is changed, it's clear that Joey Stivic is a physically correct boy doll. My husband and I think that's terrific. And he's such a soft and cuddly doll.
Archie Bunker's grandson, Joey Stivic, by Ideal, is a physically correct boy doll.
That's a great idea.
So, the doll is a cock and balls?
Yeah.
Okay.
Physically correct. Physically correct. Yeah. I was wondering. I never saw that as a kid. I didn't see a Joey Stivic doll.
That's very, very strange to me because, like you said, that's one of the reasons I asked at the start. Was like, was this a cool show? Because like, why are kids getting these toys?
It's a very weird. Yeah, I can't imagine little kids were like, "Can I get the Joey Stivic doll this year?"
Please,
Mom?
I want Archie's grandson.
That couldn't have sold 100. I wouldn't think.
It didn't seem very popular. But yeah, that's the merch of that All in the Family spawned.
I don't know if it's the greatest show ever. It's my favorite show ever, but it's the most important show in American television history. That's what I would say. Maybe that's where I settle on. Just because of what I mean. To this day, it's just every flawed male character you see on television is because of Archie Bunker and Norman Lear.
Well, I guess there is like any top 10 list or whatever would have All in the Family, The Sopranos, probably. If they're being fair, those would be the top two.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of like, well, you can't really have Tony Soprano without Archie Bunker.
Well, a lot of the scenes in the Soprano, David Chase has said this. A lot of Soprano house scenes are sitcom scenes.
Sure.
Like Tony is like Archie.
Right.
Like he's older, he's gruff. You know,
they always say the first episode basically is much more sitcomish than
and it's like, Meadows dressing like this, or the son's a meathead, or the wife won't listen to him, and Tony's,
Oh, yeah, him and Tony and AJ are completely Archie and Meathead.
Right, like Tony is like I'm sure James Gandolfini would have said that was it had to have been, and I think Parker and Stone said that like they drew Cartman's face like Archie. He looks like Archie Bunker.
Right. And Norman Lear was involved with South Park.
Yes,
He did the
early
voice of,
on,
Ben
right?
Franklin.
I think early on.
I think
right?
he said so. He had a kid. He has one kid that's like I think younger than me.
Right.
That's unbelievable. And they said they were related over South Park.
Yeah, and Lear, like, it's weird. Like, he didn't really do much after his peak. He was almost like, I'm trying to give a comparison. I don't know, but like he had a super short, crazy run.
A ton at once.
Yeah, like we're talking like One Day at a Time, The Jeffersons, Good Times, All in the Family, Maude, Mary Harvey, all at the same
It's
time.
all 70s and early 80s pretty much.
And
right?
then like he just became very involved in like, we cared about like the Constitution. Like,
Yeah.
like driving around America. And like he produced A Princess Bride and like stuff like that. But
Yeah, old Norman Lear I find kind of cool. Like he was a rebel.
Yeah.
But like when I see it, when I would hear him on podcasts with like Judd Apatow.
Yeah.
And they would just kind of, it seemed like he kind of became some of the stuff he was
Right.
railing against.
Yes, yeah.
Like he was very, like when he talked about Trump, it seemed like a complete reversal of what he was doing 40 years earlier.
Right.
But
I think like, All in the Family would think All in the Family would have been great during the Trump presidency.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that one last thing I wanted to talk to you about is like, we say now, you can never do All in the Family, whatever.
Right.
Because of like PC and censorship and all of that. But I will say one thing that I think would be hard to make it now is like all the shit on Twitter. Like I think if Twitter existed then, you would have heard a lot of Archie's jokes.
Yeah, for sure.
3 months earlier.
For sure, yeah.
Like that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, for sure. It is interesting. One last thing is I thought like Carol O'Connor. I talked about the Mammoth thing. For years, if he would go on Leno promoting something or doing like a local TV interview, he would always say like in the mid 90s, like I'd bring Archie back.
Yeah.
Like he was interested in like the late 90s. I thought it would have been pretty interesting.
You mean like a new Archie?
No, like
Carol
O'Connor, like 96 or whatever, is like a 65-year-old Archie Bunker. Like the old guy in the neighborhood. I would fucking definitely watch that for a season.
But then does it just become Archie Bunker's place?
Yeah,
that's the worry.
Yeah, because he wouldn't have worked with Lear, I suppose. But yeah, it's. I mean, I don't even know what sitcom would be numbered. I mean, I guess it would be Seinfeld.
I say Seinfeld.
Comparing Seinfeld to All in the Family, like All in the Family is not really a sitcom. Like it is,
right.
but it's like something else. Like there's a. Like I think Jerry Seinfeld would always say is like no learning on the set of Seinfeld?
No hugging, no learning. Yeah.
All in the Family was some hugging and learning. But it still worked.
Certainly.
Yeah. So.
And I think Mel Brooks said about like him and Woody Allen that Woody Allen's very micro and Mel Brooks was more macro.
Right.
I think that's kind of All in the Family versus Seinfeld, where
Right.
Seinfeld's the minutia of everyday life, whereas All in the Family's bigger issues.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Kirk Minihane, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
As always, go to blindmike.net. We appreciate you guys. And we will talk to you next week on Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.